Former President Donald Trump held a rally in New York City yesterday. He took his message to the South Bronx in an effort to court Black and Hispanic voters. Trump said he believes that he can win the blue state of New York, which he lost by more than 20 points in 2020. Meanwhile, President Biden released a pair of radio and TV ads playing old clips portraying Trump as a racist. Here now to discuss this week in politics is Leslie Sanchez and Joel Payne. Leslie is a CBS News political analyst and a Republican strategist, and Joel is a CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist. Once again, welcome, guys. Leslie, I'm going to start with you and this Trump rally in the South Bronx. In 2020, Trump only won about 16% of the vote in the Bronx. It's a very diverse area. Less than 10% of the population identifies as white. And, you know, earlier I was speaking to the reporter that had gone to this event, and she said a lot of the people, and it's just her personal experience, a lot of the people turned out to be from Long Island and not actually from the South Bronx. But I thought to myself, okay, he's clearly not going to get the 25,000 that the area could hold. But this is probably sending a message to voters beyond the South Bronx. Why did the president or the former president do this?
I think you really nailed that issue right there, Anne Marie. This is amplifying the former president's appeal among working class voters. That is an area that the Republicans will argue that the Democrats have conceded, and Trump has worked very hard to build those alliances. But it's not just with African American voters and Latino voters. I think if you look across the spectrum, voters are non-college educated voters are feeling the pinch of this very rigid economy, the high inflation, and they like the message of turning the dial back to when times were better, when they felt jobs were more secure and they had more opportunity. And if you listen to the biggest applause lines that came from that rally, it was seal the border, close the border, stop, build the wall. Those types of messages are also really an economic argument as in terms of policy and changing immigration law, but it's about turning and having opportunity for working class voters.
Joel, I'm going to talk to you about the Black voters. And I don't want to make too much of this because I think sometimes we kind of exaggerate these headlines about, Black voters leaning into Trump and President Biden losing Black voters. In fact, President Biden enjoys significant support among Black voters. But, if there's a little tick down, then it becomes something worth talking about. And so I want to ask you about the messaging that President Biden is sending out to the Black voters who are questioning whether or not they still support him. I'm wondering if he's nailing it when he kind of focuses on, look how good the economy is doing, or, you don't want the other guy, I'm better than the other guy. If that's the kind of messaging that's going to shore up Black voters who aren't quite sure right now.
Well, Anne-Marie, first, I think your caution off the top is a good one, which is Black voters aren't a monolith. And these voters all have different experiences and are going to expect different types of appeals. I do think that when you're talking about like this cycle and Black voters, and I see on our screen here, we have the word compete. And I want to underscore that word. I think it's healthy. It's good that Democrats are taking a compete mindset for these voters. It is good that Democrats and Republicans are vying for and are courting Black support. I think that it's long overdue that Black voters are treated as a persuasion universe. And by the way, I don't think that Joe Biden has to back away from that. I think he has a good case to make about the type of economy and the type of America he's delivered for African Americans. It's not perfect, no, but I think it's a good contrast story to tell when compared to Donald Trump. So I don't think Joe Biden's going to back away from a competition for Black voters. In fact, we just saw Kamala Harris in an interview earlier this week talk about the fact that Black voters, particularly Black men, she was talking about why shouldn't candidates have to compete for their vote? They should compete for their vote just like every other population. And I think that we know in 2024 it's going to be an even closer election, and that both political parties are going to have to compete for these voters.
Okay, Leslie, let me ask you about what I think is a particularly interesting moment in politics this week. Nikki Haley comes back out again. She's having like a conversation, I think, about national security maybe, and she says that she plans to vote for Donald Trump. I want to play that sound.
I will be voting for Trump. Having said that, I stand by what I said in my suspension speech. Trump would be smart to reach out to the millions of people who voted for me and continue to support me and not assume that they're just going to be with him. And I genuinely hope he does that.
So this is a far cry from an official endorsement, but it's still pretty significant. Do you see the Trump campaign doing what Nikki Haley suggests, which is reaching out to her supporters? Because as you know, there's still people voting in primaries for her, even though she's not in the race anymore. And some people have her kind of floated her name around as VP. Do you see that as a possibility?
That would be a hard possibility. I think the fundamental thing that Trump is going to be looking for is loyalty, somebody who was not as competitive with him. And that's kind of antithetical to what traditionally happens in these contests. You see a lot of contenders in the primary, and they kind of wrap up and roll up, and they roll their support behind the nominee. What's distinct about this is it didn't happen right away. There was an expectation from both sides that former president would appeal to Nikki Haley's voters and say, welcome to the tent. Let's all go forward. We want to beat the current administration. But they both kind of went to their own corners. And it's been a significant effort. And I think what's unusual about it, or important for Nikki Haley, she waited until she was through several more contests where she's drawing 18 to 20% of the support to show she still has that political heft. I think the Trump campaign and people inside are going to say, look, part of those are going to be Democrats, independents we're not looking for. Particularly, they were not really going to be true Trump voters. Maybe they were never Trumpers. But there is a very solid argument to what she's saying to appeal, to make the effort in the same way he's doing with African-American, Latino, white college educated, to appeal to all of these voters who are taking a serious look at this contest. And Nikki Haley has a big group who are concerned, but I do believe at least half of that support should end up moving the way she did back under the Republican tent.
All right, Leslie, Joel, thank you.
Anne-Marie,
Sorry, go ahead, Joel.
Very quickly, I'm so sorry. Donald Trump has one thing that I will give him credit for. He predicted that the Republican Party, the center of this Republican Party, was soft as tissue paper. That it's a hollowed out party that has no spine. We've seen it over and over again. We saw it in 2016. We saw it in 2020. We see it again in 2024. There is no reason for Nikki Haley to take this posture, given the posture she took this primary season, just like there was no reason for Ted Cruz to do it and Marco Rubio to do it in the past, and other Republicans who Donald Trump has disrespected and alienated from the party. But I want to give him credit for one thing. He predicted that this Republican Party was soft and hollow in the middle, and he took advantage of that, and that might be his greatest political trick he's pulled.
I'm sure Leslie would have a different characterization, but it's true that, she said that he was unqualified, and that was probably among the nicer things that she had said about him. But, like I pointed out, she hasn't actually formally endorsed him. Do you think she'll do that, Leslie?
She will. I do believe she will. I mean, she's already kind of leaned in that direction, and she's politically navigating those waters, and she has some political pull, but they're both not ready to kind of come magnanimously and meet in the middle. And you're seeing those big rallies he's showing in Democratic territory. It just shows how close this is going to be, and each is kind of crossing different lines.
Yeah, well, I mean, we saw it during the last election cycle, Joel. So your prediction probably has some strong foundation. Leslie, Joel, you guys, it's always great talking to you. Have a great Memorial Day weekend.